Good evening, Assalamu alaikum. You're watching program Newsroom. I'll be your host for today. My name is Fahim Bangish. And today we're going to be talking about today's day, which is a very eventful day, very productive day, as an international conference on the Afghan refugees was held today in Islamabad. And as we know, the United Nations Secretary General is visiting Pakistan. He's here on a 3-day official visit. And today's agenda items, as we will be discussing in our program, first will be, yes, the international conference, and the second agenda item that we have in our program today, that is India's response to the mediation offer by the United Nations. And in the end, we will be talking about the polio drive, which is starting in Pakistan for all the children under the age of 5. And today we're going to be talking about these issues with our panel members. And for that, we have Brigadier Tipu Sultan and Mr. Shiraz with us, who will be talking about this issue with us. Gentlemen, welcome to Newsroom. Now, before we formally start off with the discussion and the program, we'd like you to see a report on the refugee crisis of Afghanistan. Let's take a look and we'll be back.
The Prime Minister Imran Khan said despite own difficulties, Pakistan continued to host millions of Afghan refugees on its soil.
Right now, I can tell you, all of us, there's one thing we want is peace in Afghanistan. Because the people of Afghanistan deserve peace. That's the most important thing. Just on as a human being, we should all hope that the long-suffering Afghan people finally have peace. And we will be doing everything. We are doing everything to facilitate this process.
UN Secretary General, in his address to the summit, thanked Pakistan for hosting the Afghan refugees for decades. UN chief said the solution of all Afghan conflicts lies within Afghanistan.
For 40 years, the people of Afghanistan have faced successive crises. For 40 years, the people of Pakistan have responded with solidarity. The generosity now spans across decades and generations. And this is the world's largest protracted refugee situation in recorded history. And this is also a story that is close to my heart.
Speaking on the occasion, Afghan Second Vice President Danish Sarwar said they are thankful to Pakistan for hosting Afghan refugees for 40 years. The Afghan Second Vice President said his government wants return of Afghan refugees. However, for that, end of the war is imperative. UN High Commissioner for Refugees in his address said Pakistan's solidarity to hosting refugees is admirable. He said generosity does not come without cost. It has impact on local economy, infrastructure, and security. The High Commissioner said international support to the Afghan refugees remained insufficient. He appealed to donors to lend support for development in Afghanistan. Addressing the summit, Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi said Pakistan is pursuing a policy of return of Afghan refugees with dignity, safety, and honor. He urged the world to join hands with Pakistan to provide basic needs to Afghan refugees and enable them to live a dignified life. The inaugural session was followed by panel discussions where UN Secretary General, Foreign Minister Qureshi, UN High Commissioner for Refugees, US Special Representative for Afghan Reconciliation, Zalmay Khalilzad, Special Assistant to Prime Minister on Poverty Alleviation and Social Protection, Dr. Sania Nishtar, and other stakeholders deliberated future course of action.
And you watched this special report on the international conference on the Afghan refugees. Very important issues were discussed today, and it was quite an important conference, the international conference, because we had diplomats from all over the country. We had all the foreign diplomats, the ambassadors, the high commissioners were there. And that shows how important this meeting was, because not only was the United Nations Secretary General visiting, but we had an entire spectrum of all the countries. We had colors from all the countries, and this message is going to go forward to all the countries where we want to send our message. Now, my question to you, Brigadier Tipu Sultan Saab, first of all, welcome to the program. Today's message, today's conference, a very, very important conference, and it was said during this conference that this conference would help escalate, this will help catalyze the process, the Afghan reconciliation process, because solution is what we are looking forward to. Solution is what we are wanting, because unless we get an Afghan-owned and Afghan-led peace and reconciliation process, we cannot look for peace in the entire region. What are your comments on that?
Well, first of all, it goes to the credit of Pakistan turning around its foreign policy in a manner that the world is listening to Pakistan. And the visit of the UN Secretary General to Pakistan has been taken very well by the international community, by the Secretary General himself. And I think the government has to be praised for tackling that matter in an outstanding manner. Let me tell you that the things are coinciding in a manner which looks like auguring well for Pakistan. One, that the efforts of Pakistan for Afghan peace is about to succeed, and they're about to announce that agreement expected out of years of fighting over there.
Right.
And the international community realizes that there should be no more war in South Asia, and they want to give a chance to the peace. I think the UN Secretary General praised Pakistan for being generous, for opening its doors to refugees when the people are closing their borders and denying the access of refugees in their countries. Here is a country which houses the largest amount of refugees for the last 40 years over here, and it goes to the credit of Pakistan. There is much of a history to say in this context also. Pakistan has always considered people from Afghanistan as brethren, and we have never denied access to them across the border. We wished that the border should have a passport control because we wanted to eradicate terrorism, not that we wanted to trouble the Afghan people. No, not the least. It is in their interest, it is in our interest, and the forces that do not want to see stability in the region opposed the passport control and the border over there. I think if you really see what the Taliban are saying, what the US government is saying, and what Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi is saying about the peace process in Afghanistan, it is very positive. I hope and wish that the government in Kabul also picks up on a positive note to start the talks with the Taliban. An intra-Afghan dialogue is very important. It is very important when the United States leave and the foreign forces leave from Afghanistan. What will be the condition in there, and how can they achieve a rapprochement or an understanding from within? That is of critical importance. Afghanistan has had a constitution, Afghanistan has had elections, although the elections were marred by controversy and there was not much of participation in those elections. But two things have come up which makes the difference in Afghanistan. Now that the Afghan people have been in the news, there are a lot of people in Afghanistan itself who are fed up of war and want to give a chance. And then I think Afghan security forces are shaped better than they were earlier. But I have absolutely no doubt about it that if there is any political or military dominating force existing across the turf of Afghanistan, it is the Taliban.
Right, sir, you mentioned intra-Afghan dialogue. Shiraz Sahib, I'd like to address this question to you. As far as the intra-Afghan dialogue is concerned, we have a lot of mistrust as far as the warring factions in Afghanistan is concerned. The different parties do not trust each other, and all we want is sustainability after the evacuation of the American troops. Now, how do you think can we achieve that trust level between the warring faction in Afghanistan?
Well, that is then again the million-dollar question. That was the only leg of the whole peace process which was causing trouble overall. So in that context, it is then again cannot be single-handedly left on the Afghans for now. We have to have contributions from United States of America, from United Nations, from regional big countries for that matter, like China and Russia, if we want to move, and Pakistan obviously has been chipping in as much as possible in order to ensure a peace deal, in order to ensure a peaceful Afghanistan, because it's not just Pakistan, it's for the whole region. It is, as we have seen, many summits and conferences titled Heart of Asia. So this is, Afghanistan is heart of Asia. Peace in Afghanistan means the kind of ambitious desires we have, the positive ambitions for the region towards economic integration, towards economic progress, and then becoming the economic joint globally. I think that is only possible once all the factions in Afghanistan are on the table, and they not only in the presence of existing forces in Afghanistan, but the most important thing will be what will happen after that, because we have seen it has been the history of Afghanistan where people have agreed on many things in many high places, but when they come back to their own homeland, to the ground, we see there is more fighting, there is more violence, and in order
because
to address
even
that,
the history tells us that there has been a civil war in Afghanistan. That's why we're looking forward to sustainability this time.
This time, if sustainability can only be approached, can only be because wise agreement is going to be the most crucial thing in all this process. An unwise agreement will be short-lived, and after that there will be even more extreme violence in Afghanistan. So the most important thing, then again, as I've said, is everyone needs to contribute. Everyone needs to step aside from their positions and look towards interest. And for that matter, I would say not only United States or Europe or United Nations, but the regional countries can play a very significant role, including Iran. So in this context, as I said, to have a wise agreement, it is going to be utmost important that all the stakeholders, regional and otherwise, should use their influence to ensure a sustainable peace, because that is what Afghanistan needs, and that's what is the need of the hour as far as the region is concerned.
Absolutely. Now, Brigadier Tipu Sultan Saab, we know that violence or military solution is not what we're looking forward to. We're looking forward to a political settlement, and that always needs a bit of a compromise from all the sides who are involved in the talks. Now, how far do you think they can compromise? Because obviously there are aspects which can, instigate a conflict between the two sides, or not just the two sides, all the parties who are involved into the dialogue process. How far will be they willing to compromise?
Well, in the international arena and within the warring factions and atmosphere of dispute, the compromise is always relative to the power that you hold,
right,
and the leverage that you have. I think the leverage with the Afghan government has been that they were supported by the United Nations, United States and UN and NATO forces. The leverage with Taliban is that they have survived as a political and military force over decades of bombing.
That's true.
18 or 20 years.
Yeah.
So that is their leverage and that is their strength. The strength with Ashraf Ghani, Karzai, Abdullah is there. They have been in the government for the last about 10 years, 12 years, and they have made friends across the turf of Pakistan. But I think the statement of Afghan spokesman, the Taliban spokesman, about a year back or 8 or 10 months back, in which he said that the Taliban are not looking to rule Afghanistan all by themselves. So this is a departure from what they were during the 1990s, and a lot of water has gone under the bridges since then. I think the Afghan people have woken up to certain realities, and Taliban are very astute people. People think that they are only Kalashnikov wielding, turban wearing, militants or warriors, but they have proven over the years that they are very good negotiators. They are very good in their political thought, and they know their strength and they know their weaknesses also.
Right.
If you remember that when they were in power, there was a aircraft hijacked into Afghanistan, and the way they tackled the Indians, the way they tackled Pakistan was outstanding. The people who remember that would know that. So having said that, I think over all these couple of years that Zalmay Khalilzad has made his efforts to bring peace to Afghanistan through the background strength of United States, they made him the special envoy over here. I think the government in Kabul was in a constant denial regarding their contact with the Taliban. They have come to realize that the United States wants to withdraw from Afghanistan before Donald Trump gets into the fresh elections for his second term. And he has said so many times. The other day before yesterday, I heard him on the television also that the solution is very near and that he is going to look after the U.S. interest and bring the soldiers back and blah, blah, blah. So the Taliban know about that once they leave, they will be strong. But they would not want the entire Afghan nation to be plunged into war again.
Absolutely.
Like post-Soviet Union or the post-Russian withdrawal, in which Gulbuddin Hikmatyar and all those people, Hizb Islami and Abdur Rasul Sayyaf and all these people, they obliterated Kabul until Taliban took over and made their headquarters in Kandahar. But still they could not control the Dostum forces across the Salang tunnel into Mazar-e-Sharif. And at that time, even Ahmad Shah Massoud was there, the strong opponent in Panjshir Valley. So what is, I'll go back to saying again that it is the intra-Afghan dialogue which is very important. And I was hearing the ex-minister with Karzai, the Afghan ex-interior minister, important person on Geo last night, and he said that it is very good that Pakistan has a policy where it wants to cajole and it wants to help Afghanistan to bring peace and not sort of dictate. Sometimes he said sometimes it is better not to do anything rather than doing anything and meddling into other affairs.
Right.
I think Pakistan has made itself very, very clear. Pakistan said it is the Afghanistan, the Afghan-led peace also. We want to help them. We want to urge the Taliban to come on the table. But intra-Afghan dialogue is an aspect, is a chapter, is a thing to be pondered by Afghans only.
Exactly, because no matter how many external forces do come, at the end of the day,
let me tell you that the advantage that Pakistan is going to accrue out of Afghan peace, these spoilers like India and like other places, some of the intelligence agencies do not want stability in the region because of their sensitive aims. And I think when the peace comes to Afghanistan, much of their nefarious activities will be defeated and Pakistan will be well on its way towards progress. We will be able to benefit from CPEC, we will be able to benefit from the South Asian trade, and we will be able to benefit from the more understanding of international community.
Right.
Already after Imran Khan came into power, he has exerted himself into a policy which is different as compared to Zardari and Sharif's government. And this policy is more independent in nature. This is more Pakistan specific in its interest rather than a compromise.
And the foreign diplomacy is doing a better job in this government, no doubt. Now, Shiraz Sahib, I would like to ask you, the foreign minister of Afghanistan, he did mention that there are urban development programs going on in Afghanistan. There is a regional connectivity which is coming into place. Water management is being done. Of course, we know how rich Afghanistan is as far as mining is concerned. The mineral resources are concerned. Now, we spoke about the pull factor as well, because for a dignified repatriation, we do require that pull factor from Afghanistan. And he said that no matter how much we do, we still require international aid, international help, so that we could make this pull factor effective enough for all the Afghan people who are in other countries to come back to Pakistan. Also, there was one of the speakers who mentioned that about 35% of people migrating to Greece from sea were Afghan nationals. He also mentioned that the Afghan young population has to be given enough confidence so that they can feel good about themselves and their country. Now, how do you think, what's your take on that?
Well, then again, it's too early to say as far as I'm concerned. It is going to be after the intra-Afghan dialogue, what
yes.
kind of international aid we are eyeing for, what kind of development we are talking about. So it's then again, as I mentioned earlier as well, global plus regional. When I say global, I mean the Western world plus the regional stakeholders. They have to play a very proactive role in order to succeed. Otherwise, this is going to be a repeat of history then again, and there will be more burden on Pakistan when it comes to refugees. Pakistan has been exceptionally generous, exceptionally, getting out of the way, and the kind of troubles and the kind of consequences Pakistan has been paying for the past many decades, that needs to be registered. As one of the Secretary General himself probably said, the kind of support that was required was not given to Pakistan.
Yes.
The kind of...
I was going to come to that.
Yes, that is, then again, acknowledgement only cannot get the job done. This acknowledgement needs to be...
We need to get the words into actions.
Exactly, into actions, because Pakistan has been doing on its own cost, on the cost of its own security, on the cost of its own economic progression, has given the refugees the way anyone could have done, So that is important for Pakistan to ensure that this time we are more into the kind of exact mechanisms that are in place in case of any emergency, because you cannot ensure that the same thing will not repeat itself in Afghanistan. Yes, it's a positive move, it's a positive, you can say, development, but it's too early to say anything concrete and anything substantial about what will happen in the future, because the history and the kind of negotiation, the stage of negotiation itself, earlier there was the same news we have heard that, okay, we are almost on the verge of the first draft. And then there was a pause, there was a breakdown as far as the negotiations are concerned. But this time, and the negotiation basically broke off where? In the same point, intra-Afghan dialogue. And now it is then again the same. We are approaching the same position, the same stage. Now the intra-Afghan dialogue, once when it is kick-started, will definitely evolve, and there will be ups and downs, and there will be other apprehensions and positive news as well. But at the moment, the international community needs to focus on one thing and one thing only, to ensure a sustainable, wise agreement within the Afghan setup, and then from onwards, then with the agreement of the stakeholders, after whatever the conditions, whatever the equation develops, after the success of the Afghan dialogue, intra-Afghan dialogue, then come up with a strategy which is acceptable to all the stakeholders, towards which is culturally sensitive enough to come up with a plan and ensure the implementation of that plan. Once, the most important thing is to have a peace within Afghanistan, the peace within the foreign factions, and then from there on we can take the next step. So we don't have to jump to the conclusions as such.
Absolutely.
Well, it's absolutely right there, but there is a limit to which the international community and the stakeholders can ensure what is going to happen in Afghanistan in future. I think it will be too utopian a thought that if you expect that when the international community leaves, everything will be honky and dory in Afghanistan, that there will be peace and they will ensure the agreement has to be adhered to. No, it's not going to happen like that.
It's going to be difficult, practically speaking.
It's going to be a difficult...
They're regional play. This time we need to have more stakeholders as far as the regional players are concerned. Pakistan has played its part, always has played it. Now China and Russia, both of them have to come up with a plan as well.
Yeah, I think the Chinese factor is very important. The other factors are not as effective, I would say, because the Chinese have a different approach in solving the problem as compared to the West, and as compared to the Indians, let's say, other Central Asian countries, or Pakistan wants peace, but Pakistan has got limited economic capacity also, although we have a common border with Afghanistan, which we affect each other in a huge manner. But China can play a very important role. I think any effort to marginalize Taliban would not work. That needs to be understood. That needs to be understood by Kabul. That needs to be understood by Ashraf Ghani, Abdullah and Karzai. If they want peace, They need to go and sit with Taliban in a serious manner, not to rebuke them.
Because like they said in the morning,
right
that
now,
there is no win-lose situation. It has to be a win-win situation where everybody has to be
absolutely.
go along
Taliban in
with
Afghanistan
integrity.
and Pakistan in the region. These two factors need to be accounted. They need to be kept in mind, whosoever the negotiators are. These two factors need to be highlighted and adjusted accordingly, because without a proper addressal of these two factors, there is no peace. There is no
No, absolutely.
But Pakistan will be well advised to be very careful and let the Afghans solve their own problem.
Exactly, because after all, it's Afghan people, it's their country, it's their territory. Also, the United Nations Secretary General, he said this is the year of opportunity, this is our last chance to achieve peace, and we'll do everything to seize this opportunity, to get this opportunity in order to solve the overall Afghan crisis. And blame game, we are totally beyond that. Now, like we said in the second segment of the program, we're going to talk about the response of India over the United Nations Secretary General as he spoke about the human rights situation in Kashmir. For that, we have a special report made for you. Let's take a look.
As United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres visits Pakistan to mark the 40 years of Afghan refugees in the country, questions regarding tensions in the region owing to Indian belligerence and brutal crackdown in Indian-occupied Kashmir were sure to pop up. The UN chief visits Pakistan at a time when the nuclear-armed neighbors are at loggerheads. It's been almost 200 days of curfew in the occupied valley after India, in violation of UN resolutions, revoked the autonomy of the region and has been high on warmongering and continues to defy the ceasefire agreement along the line of control. Antonio Guterres, during his interactions in Pakistan, did not mince his words when he expressed concerns over human rights violations being committed by the occupying forces of India in Jammu and Kashmir. During the joint press conference with the Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi in Islamabad on Sunday, the UN chief called for respecting human rights in the occupied valley and implementation of UN resolutions.
It is clear that we have taken a position about the need for Security Council resolutions to be implemented and for effective de-escalation and dialogue linked to that, with another very important condition, which is full respect for human rights and continental freedoms in Jammu and Kashmir. In relation to the ceasefire, I visited Mojib. We believe that Mojib should have full freedom of movement. It has on the Pakistani side. We hope that this will also be achieved on the other side.
Earlier yesterday, UN Chief Antonio Guterres also touched one of the most pressing issues regarding water management between India and Pakistan. The UN chief said water must not be used as an instrument of conflict.
What I would ask the two countries is to have a clear cooperation in relation to water. With effective cooperation and dialogue, all these problems can and must be solved. Because if one country thinks that solving the problem and letting the others in a bad situation, it's a good thing, it is not. Because in the end, then things turn against everybody. So it is clear that water must be an instrument of peace and not an instrument of conflict.
Even in the past, UN Secretary General has always called for respecting the UN resolutions on Kashmir. When India unilaterally changed the status of Indian-occupied Kashmir last August, Antonio Guterres said the status of Kashmir remains disputed despite Indian move. It is now time UN moved beyond statements in the face of growing war hysteria by extremist Hindu party in power in India.
Well, you watched the special report on United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres and what he had to say as far as Kashmir is concerned, as far as India is concerned. Now, we know that India has had a very, very aggressive approach whenever Kashmir is mentioned, be it the US president, be it any part of the world or any forum for that matter. India has always been calling Kashmir an internal matter, and the fact that nobody should be interfering in the internal matters of India. Now, Brigadier Tipu Sultan Saab, we know that India is very aggressive, India is quite obstinate when it comes to Kashmir, and as far as the United Nations mediation is concerned, India has said, according to, I quote, the Hindu Times, one of their newspapers, that there is no scope for the mediation. Your comments, please.
Well, it is up to the United Nations to ponder on how the member states behave when it comes to their effort to help a peace in the region, help the people, to help improve the human rights violations by India. And you know, we have seen that the United Nations is rebuked by various countries like Israel, like India, like America itself. And you know, those powers that are there in the Security Council, those who hold veto power, and the people who got bigger economies, they violate the United Nations. They don't agree with them. They violate all sorts of norms of diplomacy, all sorts of international agreements, and they get scot free from it. And the Indians are intoxicated by their Nazi sort of a government emanating out of RSS from New Delhi. It's a terrorist government in place, and it is perpetuating terrorism across India, fanning atrocities on minorities, not only in Kashmir but in UP and Bihar and Bengal, everywhere. And the world has come to realize that, and the Indians might think that they are too much into the international community's acceptance, but I think it is beginning to tell on the Indians in the international community. If you read and if you listen to their writers who got some thinking mind on their shoulders, they think that the Indians are not doing well, and that this government is leading India into chaos, confusion, and it is bringing disrespect to the Indians and the international community. However, I must tell you that the sufferers are Muslims, and particularly the people of Jammu and Kashmir. And the Prime Minister has said very openly that a country of 1 billion people, in which a terrorist extremist government is ruling, whose concepts are based on Nazism, and their chief who's warmongering from morning till evening, the international community must take notice of that, and there is a danger for peace in the region. I think what needs to be done in Pakistan is that you know, the concept that Indians have been perpetuating against Pakistan, that the freedom struggle in Kashmir is a terrorist movement supported by Pakistan. You cannot term the freedom movement in Kashmir and put it into a terrorism basket. Gone are the days when they successfully did that during 90s and early part of this century. It's not possible for the Indians to do that. What needs to be done over here in Pakistan is that if our neighbor, who is many times stronger than us in economy and number of soldiers that they have, and the number of tanks and aircraft and the marine force that they have, although it is not literally according to the numbers that you win or lose, because Allah says in Quran, "Kam min fi'atin qalilatin ghalabat fi'atin kaseeratin bi'idhnillah wallahu ma'as sabirin," that we have given victory to smaller force over a bigger force many times, and we understand that. But what needs to be done is that we need to prepare for this threat. I think what needs to be done is that the public has to be made aware of, the civil defense has to be made aware of, there has to be a training for young people to defend themselves, there has to be a training of Kashmiri people. If the Indians attack, they should be able to defend themselves, because the thing is that it is no more in the world.
They call it the Pakistan occupied Kashmir, and they say that the only solution is evacuation of those areas.
They want to, you know, capture the rest part of Kashmir in 7 days. It's laughable. Many people are going to die. There are weapons across the border on both sides which are very lethal, and Indians do not know that they will be incinerated if they attack Pakistan. I can assure you that. And they will not be able to save themselves from that fire. What needs to be done is that the people have to be trained, and the government should not shy away from training the people and telling the world that there is a warlike situation over here, and we have to prepare for it. We are not preparing for it. And to me, this is not a right strategy, that you should only say that, oh, we don't want war. It's not that you don't want.
Exactly.
Russian strategists always said that. The Russian strategists said that you may not seek war, but the war may seek you.
That's true.
And the fundamental Sun Tzu has said thousands of years back that war is an extension of political policy for extremists like Modi.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And he also said that winning a war without fighting it is more desirable. Fighting 100 wars and winning them is not as
if you want to
desirable.
win, if you want to win, you have to prepare for it.
I think so. We
You have to
as
prepare for
we are confident about the security forces we have, 800,000 plus, and we are confident and we have trained and equipped them enough that we will be able to take hold of any military power that comes our way. The most important thing is if we need to train ourselves with due respect, we need to train our youth for the opportunities, economic opportunities which are available in the form of CPAC, which will be available in the upcoming days once there is peace in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
And then again, yes, Kashmir has been one of our topmost agenda, and we have been pursuing it for the past 70 years. We have fought wars and so on and so forth, but we have to organize ourselves in a better way. We have not been organized in the past, and that is the need of the hour. We have to have a grand strategy, diplomatic, economic, and so on and so forth. Now, a strong foreign policy, a strong message can only be sent if you are strong internally. This is more important. A strong internal policy, a strong internal situation will give a more clear and stronger message to the external enemies and friends as well at the same time. So that is going to be the need of the hour. As far as the Kashmir issue is concerned, yes, we have to take it more prudently. We have to be more considerate towards every possible
Pakistan
gesture.
has been mentioning the Kashmir issue time and again on different international fora. Also, the fact that UN observers group are not allowed in Kashmir.
It's
whereas
not
Pakistan
about,
has been
look at the size of economy in India. Look
Right.
at the size of relationship they have been able to develop over the period of past 70. Look at the difference between the rate of the rupee in India and Pakistan. So all these things, so power can not only be translated or you can say measured in terms of how many nuclear weapons you have. There is a non-conventional warfare. There is a new kind of security which is going on.
You just watch the Indians to keep on committing strategic mistakes. But at the same time, you should be prepared yourself. Because the balloon goes out in India and they're now not able to control the public, they're not able to control the situation in Kashmir.
Even now, the situation is almost out of control if you look in India.
That is why they take Pakistan's name and bogey, and they want to, divert the attention of the people, for which we should be prepared. But we are letting them commit the strategic mistakes that they are doing. We are happy that an insane person like Narendra Modi is leading them, and they're very happy about it.
And due to these strategic mistakes, India is going down economically.
Economically, and that's what we have to avoid, any strategic mistake.
That's true. And our next segment is about the polio drive, which is starting in Pakistan. As we know that polio is only prevalent in Pakistan and Afghanistan out of the entire world. And the polio drive is starting for all the children under the age of 5. Obviously, vaccination of about 39.6 million children would be done. According to the official National Emergency Operations Center, the total number of polio workers would be 265,000, which shows the commitment of Pakistan to work to get rid of the polio situation. With this, I'd like to thank both of you for coming in and sharing your views and your thoughts with us.
Thank you.
All your views and thoughts are very precious to us. Both of them are very important issues that we discussed today, and thank you very much for being here and giving us your time. These were Brigadier Tipu Sultan Saab and Shiraz Saab, who were here as our panel guests, and we're discussing these situations. And as we were telling you, as far as the anti-polio drive is concerned, that Pakistan is trying its best to be polio-free, as some 5 cases were they developed in the last few days. They were diagnosed, and Pakistan is trying its level best. This is showing the commitment of the Pakistani government to try its level best to get rid of the polio virus from Pakistan and from all the children of Pakistan, and to get rid of this crippling disease once and for all. All the countries of the world are polio-free except for Pakistan and Afghanistan, and the government is doing all it can in order to get rid of the virus. Thank you very much for joining us. This is Fahim Bangish signing off. Stay tuned to PTV World.
point. If they agree, that agreement would devoid them of their legitimacy of their cause, because for last 18-19 years they have been fighting to expel the international forces. Should they agree to American bases in Afghanistan, I think there will be a lot of frictions within the Taliban ranks. And one demand that America has been making to Afghan Taliban for this 7 days ceasefire was to check this possibility whether Afghan Taliban are actually operating as a cohesive force, or there is already a disintegration within the ranks on the issue of dialogue. So Americans want to secure guarantees whether Afghan Taliban would be able to implement this peace agreement in letter and spirit, because after the death of Mullah Omar, we have seen that few factions emerged within Afghan Taliban. There were infightings, then there was arrival of Daesh in Afghanistan. So how Taliban basically manage those internal frictions, that will be the key question. How they manage their relations with the Kabul administration, that is the second question. With regards to Kabul administration, there is a lot of skepticism that perhaps the Kabul administration and Afghan Taliban would not sit on the negotiation table because both sides abhor each other. But we must not forget that the idea for engaging Afghan Taliban came from President Ashraf Ghani 2 years ago. It was him who proposed this idea to the Americans that we should, engage Afghan Taliban into the talks. Although Pakistan has been advocating this idea since 2001, when the Americans went into Afghanistan, advocating that there is no solution by the barrel of gun. At the end, you have to. So that is one reason to be optimistic that perhaps on the side of President Ashraf Ghani, there is still an inclination to sit and talk with Afghan Taliban. So there are a lot of ifs and buts, and only the time will decide what the future holds for the country.
So final question before we conclude our program for today. The US, when it finally exits Afghanistan and there's a vacuum that's going to be left behind, who will be then responsible for building the infrastructure back and revitalizing Afghanistan's economy, which is largely dependent on aid right now?
At the moment, I think that's the million-dollar question, and a number of policymakers are concerned. If Americans disengage completely from Afghanistan, what's the advantage, what's the incentive they have in pouring in billions of dollars? Yes, Americans wish to maintain few thousand soldiers for training purposes. If there are some boots on the grounds, that may be a little incentive that United States of America would have to continue to pour in billions of dollars in Afghanistan. But we must also look at the domestic, political and economic situation in Afghanistan. President Trump is not a generous spender like his predecessors. China, because of coronavirus, the entire economy is suffering a slowdown. Russia has historically stayed away from spending money in Afghanistan.
And also,
so finances.
Just to interrupt you here, excuse myself for that, but like the Afghanistan papers that came out were very clear about the US spending that happened earlier over there in that country. It was done in a very arbitrary way, and it didn't necessarily benefit the people as far as building of the schools, etc., different ways that it led to corruption, etc. So it wasn't as if it was being done in some sort of well thought out way. This is per the Washington Post.
Well, certainly we can question the methodology about spending that money, but we cannot deny the fact that Americans have poured in billions of dollars in restructuring and rebuilding Afghanistan. Yes, a lot of money has gone to the coffins of corrupt political elite in Afghanistan, but you have seen certain impact on the ground as well. At the moment, besides except United States of America, no international donor is willing to spend so generously in Afghanistan as the Americans have done during last 18 years. That will be the key questions once the Americans withdraw from the country.
Right. Thank you so much, Khurram Iqbal sir, for joining us on our program. That brings us to the end of our program. Now, thank you so much for watching Newsroom, and we'll see you next time. It's bye-bye for now.